Good evening. My name's Donnie Glover. Like my Glover Show. You know, education is a very, very important thing. It was in my household growing up. My mom and my dad, they made learning fun, and I always enjoyed school. As a matter of fact, I loved the rainy days because the little bad kids wouldn't come to school those days. That's just my story. And I tell you what, years later, I have stayed in touch with my teachers. Um, Going back at least to the second grade, Miss Parks, Francis Parks, because those teachers, I'll tell you this story. I had to go to summer school one time, Poly, 10th grade, Algebra 2, Trig, and Physics. And Miss Ingram was my summer school teacher. And what the teachers during the daytime made difficult, Miss Ingram, she just broke it down, I equals E over R. And I could never understood why those other teachers were so difficult. Is what are they trying to weed us out? Were you trying to get me to quit? Because I wasn't quitting. But nonetheless, we are being joined today by a woman who apparently knows a lot more about teaching than Brianna Ross. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Glover. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited that you still stayed in contact with your teacher. It's amazing. See, good teachers will have you remember things like that. Even years later, you still remember it. That's a good thing.
Because if you ever get into teaching, it'll happen to you. We did a mentoring program over at Baltimore City Jail. And I would imagine you've had a moment like this, Miss Ross, where those students come back up to you on the street and you have no idea of who they are. And they say, thank you.
Yeah.
It'll just stop you in your tracks.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It happens. I had my very first year's teaching, I was teaching 5th grade. And one of the things, it's funny you mentioned this formula, but one of the things I would have my 5th graders do every morning, it was the way we started our morning. Every day they would recite Hey Black Child by County Cullen every day. It was a part of what we did. And so those students now, they were 5th grade at the time, they're now 11th grade. And I saw one of them recently over the summer, and he immediately started spitting it off. He remembered most of it. He stumbled over a couple words, but he remembered most of it. So I'm like, all right, I did one good thing. As long as you remember one good thing, that's what counts.
Can you share that with us, County Cullen?
Yeah, it goes, hey, Black, I haven't said it in years, but I'm going to do it now. Hey, Black child, do you know who you are? Do you know who you really are? Do you know you can be what you want to be? If you try to be what you can be? Hey, Black child, do you know you are strong? I mean, really strong. Do you know you can do what you want to do? If you try to do what you can do? Hey, Black child, do you know, I'm missing one, but it goes, do you know you can learn what you want to learn if you try to learn what you can learn? Hey, Black child, be what you can be, know what you can know, do what you can do. And tomorrow, the last line's going to escape me. And tomorrow the world, I think, will be what you want it to be.
That's all right.
My 5th graders, my 11th graders they should still know it, but we used to do it every day.
Ooh. County Cullen, the Harlem Renaissance.
Yes, Harlem Renaissance, County Cullen. So I used to teach ELA. I don't know if I taught them any. I don't know if they remembered any ELA. I don't even really know how much I taught it, but they definitely knew that. We left that year, especially that first year. We left that year. We knew about the Harlem Renaissance in particular. We knew our Black writers and Black artists. So who knows what else they walked away with, but they at least got that one good thing.
Ms. Ross, we have to send you to our HBCUs and make sure our graduating seniors coming out of these HBCUs have that in there, not just in their minds and their hearts, but in their souls. I was at one HBCU where graduating seniors I met had not read Malcolm X's autobiography, and I almost fell out of my chair.
Yeah, there's some things. It's funny because I didn't go to a HBCU, but I had my grandfather graduated from Morgan State in 1956. My mother graduated from not Morgan State, Lincoln University. My aunts went to Morgan. And so I didn't go to a HBCU, but I grew up with a really strong, rich understanding of how important it was to know my culture and know myself. And that's the one thing I think that our students miss now. They really miss, they miss out that we don't have that same connection to our past and our culture. And this just deep reflection about who we are. That's something that, and especially, I teach in Baltimore County. My school is about 80% Black, but The county is a largely white county, and so we just don't get that same. It takes a lot of extra effort on behalf of teachers, Black teachers, to do that, to impart that shared cultural knowledge, because our students really miss a lot of that right now.
I needed you last night when my daughter asked to interview me for her class at Coppin on Brown versus Board of Education.
Wow.
Now, first of all, I want her to know that I wasn't even born in 1954.
She
And
don't
I
know
don't
that.
know, huh?
She don't know that. You might get a pass. I'm just kidding, Mr. Glover.
But she started asking me, and because you mentioned Baltimore County.
Mm-hmm.
I think the county is what, 25% Black?
Mm-hmm. Just about.
What we do know is that without Black people, Baltimore County wouldn't have the.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Black people pay a lot of taxes out there in Baltimore County. It's long
Absolutely.
overdue time for us to have a Black county executive. Were you there when Joe Hairston was there?
I was not.
Oh my, you have to find him.
Yeah, I don't know him.
He was the superintendent a few years just before Dallas Dance.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was there. I got there when when Dr. Dance was there.
You will love Mr. Hairston. He was passionate about education, and this was during the Obama era.
Mm-hmm.
And my final question to him at his final press conference, was how did it feel to be a superintendent, the first Black Baltimore County school superintendent within the era of Obama?
Right.
And he just got so excited to answer that. But so many thoughts you just hit me.
Tell me about your daughter's paper. I'm really interested. I'm actually doing some work right now around Brown versus Board of Education. So I'm actually a little interested about what her paper is about, or what she was interviewing you about.
She asked me, had I went to school, what was the racial demographics? And so I told her, kindergarten, it was mixed. We had all races, but from first grade through the 9th grade, from Matthew Henson to William H. Lamel, that was all Black. When I got to Poly was about 40% Black.
Okay.
Now Poly is majority Black, but back then it was the first time I'd ever went to school with white kids. And it was at a different part of town. It was over in Hamden, and it was culture shock.
Yeah.
See, at Lamel, I was academic, A student, honor roll and all of that. But it was something a little different at Lamel. Every day you had to be able to throw hands.
Right.
It does. And so I was no nonsense when I got to Poly. And it took me some time to just understand. First of all, the Algebra 2, I never felt up to snuff with my white counterparts. I didn't feel like I was prepared enough.
Right.
And so Polly taught me you have no weekends, and where your friends down the street are playing, you're gonna be in here reading a little light blue algebra book and geometry and learning theorems. But her questions seemed to center around whether or not I thought the education was the same. And I just answered the questions, but maybe I should go back and have the conversation with her that while my dad and him, he went to Douglas. That was like the first school Black people went to. And he said it out of his own mouth. I challenged him on the math part though, but he said they got a better education than did we. That was when we had teachers like you everywhere.
Well, this is why I'm curious too. I should have called you like a couple weeks ago because I would have been interviewing you too. I had to do something very similar. But one thing I've just been really curious about, and I'm interested at your time at Lamel, your teachers, were they mostly Black men and women, or were your teachers mixed?
They were mostly Black.
Okay.
My teachers, all of them were Black. I don't know that I had one. I knew down in the basement in industrial arts, they had a Mr. Peltzer, and everybody knew him because if you ever cut class down in the basement, he would throw an industrial yardstick at you. So it wasn't a regular little yardstick. It
Yeah.
was something that had some wood to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't really a class cutter. I'll tell you this. This is a vivid memory. Back then, people were proud to get deficiencies.
Why is that?
How many deficiencies you got? How many deficiencies you got? I don't have no deficiencies. It was almost like not succeeding academically was a badge of honor.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was. Oh no, that's the reality.
Yeah.
Smart kids are not welcome, but we had a smart kid in our class, and he's gone on to glory, but he was a gangster too. His name was AD. And you couldn't mess with nobody in our class because AD would pop. It was a different day and era. But most of the teachers were black. And what my dad was, the point he was making was that nobody's going to love us like our own teachers. So when they bring in Teach for America, no disrespect to the non-black people, but I've seen where non-black teachers are quicker to get our young men on Ritalin than they are
Oh
to
yeah.
understand that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
So this is actually the point I'm making. I'm working on a paper right now, and I'm working on my EDD from Morgan State University. So I'm throwing around what my dissertation topic is going to be. Pray for me that I'm going to land on it real soon, but I'm working on it. And so I've been thinking a lot about this idea about teaching before Brown, and this argument that I think is a very authentic argument to be made, that education for us, for black boys and girls, to some degree was better before Brown, right? So that when segregation was legal, there was something different that was happening in schools. And so when I say education, I think education and schooling are different. And so I don't know if I necessarily mean, right, we know that the resources, that they were underfunded, they had less resources, the school buildings were dilapidated, right? Like those things were something separate. And even in terms of like what achievement looked like, right? We can measure achievement all kinds of ways. But I think in terms of having those teachers who look like me, who live where I live, who live in my neighborhood, who go to my church, who know my mama, who see me at the grocery store, right? There is something to be said about students having teachers like that. And so I think that there is a real argument to be made that schools for Black children, there is something that we can learn now as urban educators, as educators in schools of color with children of color. There is an argument for us to be made that we need to think about, what do we need to look backwards? What lessons do we need to take looking back that we might be able to apply now? Because I think there's a lot that can be learned there.
love.
Absolutely. At the core of it. That's it. That's it.
Love.
There's no other argument out. I mean, for me, I know my teaching is rooted in love. It's the only reason I do it. It's why I show up. I mean, all the other things are great, but I know I just love my kids. It's the reason I go to work every day, because I love them, right? And there was something, and not to say there are some
There-
phenomenal white educators, other educators of color, right? But there is just something different when it's us with us, right? Like there's just something, it's something different to be said there. And absolutely, it's rooted in love, 100%.
I had a white teacher at Dunbar, so I did 2 years of poly after I was traumatized by those geometry and algebra. And don't forget the physics and engineering teachers. They were horrible. I'd never gotten a 16 in my life. 32s. It was like, oh my God.
Right.
But I did have a white teacher at Dunbar, Dan Maurer. And what I will always appreciate about him was how he encouraged me to continue writing. I've been writing since first grade. First love letter was to, I shouldn't say her name. She might be listening.
Spilling your secrets.
Yeah, but writing, I've always loved writing, but Mr. Maurer, so I agree. There are white teachers who have encouraged Black people over the years. At the same time, there have been white teachers who have traumatized Black students. Malcolm X was traumatized. In his autobiography, he talked about, the white lady saying he could never be anything more. You could be a janitor. But I tell you, here's something else. On the back of a $1 bill, this is my flashbacks to algebra, geometry, there's a pyramid. And it dawned on me later in life, if we teach our children that Africans built those pyramids,
Yep.
then A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
Might have a little bit more relevance, right? Yeah, just a little bit. Absolutely. And being able to connect that knowledge. And that's something that I know we don't. I can say I know we're not, and not everybody, right? But for the most part, our students are not receiving, they're not on the receiving end of that kind of knowledge. And so I think a lot about what schools would look like if there were schools that were really centered in this, like in African centered knowledge, in cultural knowledge, in just this sort of shared experience. Because I think it's more than just, I think it's more than just us sharing skin, right? Because we know all skin folk and kin folk, right? And just like there are white teachers who have traumatized Black students, the same thing can be said. There are Black teachers who have done the same. But I think a lot, this will be my future, this will be what my future plans look like. But I think a lot about what schools would look like if it's just us for us, in a really earnest way, right? Like I think what I know for my students is like, I know what the world looks like when y'all leave here. I know what the world looks like outside this classroom, right? So I create this space where you can be you here, and you will be loved here, and you can become your fullest, most beautiful, complex, intricate self here. But there's also a piece like, I need you to know what to expect when you leave here. And I need you to know, not just when you leave this building, but when you leave my classroom and you go down to the hall to her class, I need you to know what they're thinking of you and how you need to navigate this other side of the world, right? And I think about what schools would look like if we were all doing that for our Black children, because we know our experience is just unique, especially in this country. We have just that we live an experience that no one else is living. And I think I wonder a lot around that. So it's funny. Your daughter and I, we're our brains are in the same wavelength.
She wants to be a teacher,
She
early
should be.
childhood.
That's what I was. That's wonderful.
I'll
That's
have to
wonderful.
send her your way.
Yes, please.
She's an entrepreneur at 16. So she's been an entrepreneur for 4 years.
Amazing. That's wonderful.
She's
We need them now. We got to get them. We got to get the teachers now when they're young and fresh. That's what we need to be able. We need to start tapping into, like children like your daughter who want to do the work and who are inspired and motivated by it, to get them into it. Really get them into it now. That's wonderful.
A lot of people could assume that Baltimore County schools don't have the same urban challenges as Baltimore City public schools.
Mm-hmm. So it's a very real assumption. It's a very real assumption. Our challenges are very similar. Our challenges are not everywhere, so not in all parts of the county. Certainly, some of the things that I've experienced on my side of the county look very similar. I've done some work in some Baltimore City schools, and we look in about the same. We look like twins, and so, to some degree, there are things that we experience that they don't. Just like there are things that Baltimore City schools experience that our students really don't. But there's definitely a level of, if challenge is the word, there's definitely a level of challenge in our schools. Beautiful challenge, but we're experiencing a lot of the same issues. I mean, and we know with communities of color. I teach in Randallstown. It's primarily people of color, especially. There's a large immigrant population in Randallstown. Communities of color are experiencing oppression no matter where you are, right? It don't matter if you're in the city, in the county, and on a farm, that we're experiencing the same kinds of economic depression, housing insecurity, food insecurity, right? So the issues are the same. It don't matter the location.
They done closed 3 supermarkets on Liberty Road. You darn right you got
absolutely
desert out there.
So I used to teach actually at Scotts Branch, which was right behind one of those supermarkets that closed, which was Shoppers. I remember thinking that when they closed, like, yo, where are they about to go? So even where my school is situated at, we're in the middle of a food desert, right? Like, so the options are, you got to go to Wegmans and Owens Mills. You got to go all the way up. You got to get Wegmans.
I can't afford them every day.
Now, ain't no shade to Wegmans, but if you don't have the means for that commute, it's not within a mile. It's not, it's not within walking distance. Even going to the Walmart on Liberty Road, that's another 3 miles, right? And so our communities are experiencing very, very similar things.
We have people, rats and roaches. Y'all got bunny rabbits, deer and foxes out there.
Yes.
A nuisance is a nuisance.
Yes, a nuisance is a nuisance.
PTA meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Are our parents participating in PTA or whatever the name is today? I know it kind of changes
Yeah.
sometimes.
So we do have a PTA, and our PTA is really doing a lot of really great work. And has this year, especially after, the pandemic, like things have just shifted so much, right? And so this year after the pandemic, and after a year and a half of interrupted learning and weird transitions and changes, our PTA is really coming back together. Now, granted, and we're doing a lot of work. Our school admin is doing a lot of work to encourage as many parents as possible. Like, please come out. If you are a Deer Park parent, if you hear me, please, please, please join the PTA. And I think what we're seeing, what all schools, all teachers, all administrators are seeing this year is that parent school partnership is really, really important. And we need the parents like in the schools. We need that community support. And in a school like mine, which is very large, close to 1,600 students, parent and community, and it's not just the parent support, right? It's the community. Like, we need the full backing of the community behind us to make this thing work. When we're disconnected, this education doesn't work that way. It really is a partnership. So we're definitely seeing a surge in our PTA and some more participation. More, there's always room for improvement, but we're making some strides right now.
And I'm trying to be good, but I've been to Deer Park PTA meetings before. Maryland's Teacher of the Year, Brianna Ross, and I'm here to tell you, it was no more than 15 people. This was some years ago. But what I remember is we had all of the happy hours. We had it was Sister's Place then. I think it's Identity now. We had the club. We had Corinthians.
Yeah.
But we not at the PTA meeting.
Yeah. And to some degree, there's still, and especially in terms of our numbers, our percentages of parents in the PTA matched, compared to the percentages of students and families we have, there's definitely not a comparison. So our numbers are still, it's more than 15 parents, but they're still much, much smaller than we would like them to be. But I think it goes both ways. And I think coming back to this, to this school year has been, for everybody, has been really challenging. But one thing that I think is important is not just expecting the parents to come to us, but also for us to go to them. And this, again, really speaks back. I'm going to hone in on this point again about the kinds of schools that we have and the kind of people that we have invested in schools, because it's not just about, hey, come to Deer Park on a Thursday night and come sit in our cafeteria for this PTA meeting. It's also about, hey, the teachers, half the boys are playing a football game this weekend. We went to the football game this weekend, right? Or like the things that are happening in the community. It's not just about them coming to us. We also have to do that work too. So it's not, I think sometimes that's the misconception. And I sometimes struggle because I do think parents sometimes get a bad rap in education circles. Like, sometimes we want to vilify the parents, and I can understand that. I'm a teacher, so I can understand sometimes that logic about being frustrated. Like, I've called and no one's come and no one's responded to me, but there's also this is also a two-way street. So we can't just expect you to come to us, especially what we also know is that for many of our parents at Deer Park and just in communities of color in general, not everybody's parent had a positive experience in school. And so if school was not a positive experience as an adult, as a parent, what makes us think that that the parents are just going to willingly come back and support us when for them school was not a safe place? And so I think that's what we have to really work on. How are we making school a safe place for everybody?
Okay.
So I think some of them come with the contention already about schools.
So you're working on your dissertation, right?
Not yet. I'm doing the coursework right now.
Okay. So here's a question for you. How has education changed? And by the way, I've met the first Black teacher from Baltimore County.
Oh.
She actually lives in Prince George's County, Deborah Carter. She's in the politics these days. But you know that we've been living out Liberty Road since roughly 70s. So this has been like a 50-year exodus of people who haul-tailed out of West Baltimore, went up to Woodlawn, Randallstown. I got my own little nickname, so you might as well get used to it. Woodlawn, Randallstown, and on my arm and my leg. But we moved all my family out there. But we moved out there, and one of the big things on our mind, the priority was a better school system. So, I mean, that's why people move to the county. You can't get some totally mobile Black women to move to Sandtown.
Right. But I think even in thinking of it from that perspective, right, when we made this mass exodus to this part, to over here in the county, and I live over here. I live in Windsor Mill, so this is, this is very much my community. When we made this exodus over here, again, I think you have to think about, and again, I don't want to vilify schools, nor do I intend to vilify teachers who are doing really earnest work. I think all teachers do important work, but I think when we're saying what Randallstown looked like 60 years ago, right, it was largely white, right? Like, you have these white families, and it's what was considered a very middle class, a very, very nice at the time, a very, very nice middle class community. It was considered like that was the status, right, for that, like, was a middle class echelon sort of neighborhood. And then you have this exodus of Black families and Black individuals coming into the county and coming into these schools with teachers, again, who don't look like them, who don't understand their backgrounds, right? And then what happens with the teachers who we could at the time consider good teachers? They don't know how to handle Black children. They're not comfortable dealing with the racial dynamics. Discomfort is the reason everybody flees, right? And so then what happens to our schools? What happens to the schools in those areas? We have teachers constantly coming in and out, leadership constantly coming in and out, right? Like, it's a systemic thing. And so I feel really strongly when we don't have school leaders, principals. Like, I think my principal is phenomenal and does a really good job at this, about being connected to the community. And almost all of my school leaders are men and women of color. But I think when we don't have that, when we don't have, like, we are all invested in this for you for a particular reason. When we have teachers in classrooms with students who they don't know, don't understand, and don't care to do it, of course the education is not going to be better. Learning is about more than just, I wrote down these words, I memorized it, now I know it, right? Like, learning for all people, learning is sharing, it's connection, right? When you think about the things you learned from your grandmother, you remember those things, or the things you learned from that teacher. It was about connection. It was about relationship. I don't think any learning will happen without a relationship. And so if those things are happening, of course, education looks bad. And I think it continues with the cycle of what the schools on the West Side, sometimes we get a bad rap, when I know good things are happening on my West Side schools, and I know good things are happening there, but sometimes we get a bad rap because of that.
There's been a lot of people who have poured into that part of the world.
Yeah.
Dunbar Brooks, that was before your time. Have you ever heard of him? Dunbar Brooks. He was on the school board. Also, Cheryl Pastor.
Yes. Now she has absolutely, yes, she is an icon, a living legend. I got to meet her recently this year. And just her spirit, her air, just meeting her was really wonderful. And I've heard nothing but really great things, but I know what she has poured into this part of the community.
I have a solution for you. And it's a scenario that is rarely discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Northwest Baltimore County is every bit of 5 miles or more from Towson.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the Black folk don't go to PTA meetings like I think they should.
Mm-hmm. We
don't go to Towson, to county seat, to the county council meeting, to the home of the county executive, ever. Yeah. If we barely go to PTA, mm-hmm. we never go to Towson. And maybe a part of the solution, maybe Towson needs to have a similar county executive liaison office for Northwest Baltimore County to make it more accessible. Maybe they should have council meetings on the west side of the county. But we got to take our children, our parents, to Towson.
Yeah.
We have to see how government works, and that government only responds when they see the numbers and you engage them.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny that you say that. I think part of that, and I can say, just even speaking for myself, like I know I feel very disconnected from government. And I think sometimes, and I think I know what our community sometimes feels, is that, like, the government doesn't work in our favor. Right. And I think even that, like, understanding, like, I can say for Deer Park, for example, so we're an incredibly large school. 1,600 students is a lot of students. And so we say all the time that, the difference between us and a school in Towson, on the eastern side of the county, whatever, is that when they want change, that community, just like you said, they are in the face of their local officials, of their county executives. They're writing the petitions. They're starting the Facebook groups. And so when it's time to rezone or build a new school or make whatever happen, it's happened because the community is like, we are making it happen. And I don't know why that is, because we have seen our community, if we think back to, 60, 70 years ago, we think back to the way the civil rights are, we know how leveraging our power works, right? Like we've seen it work. And I don't know what has happened from then to now that we don't have the same sense. We don't have the same urgency to form coalitions in that same way.
We got soft.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
After the 60s and 70s, that was the hardest time. That's
and it was
when
like we made it.
Yeah, we were solid. We were fit. We push ups.
Yes.
We were good. But we got soft. We got comfortable. We now have roads instead of the avenues.
Right. I think we got comfortable, and I think there stopped being a need. There stopped being a need to fight. Right. Like we made it. We got equality. We're not segregated. Right. Like we made it. We're good. We're done.
In our minds, we made it.
In our mind, right? Without the without the recognition that clearly in 2021, our present circumstance doesn't tell us that. We can look at any data bank, any source of facts, right? And it tells us that that's not the case. But there has been this sense, and it's funny because that's one of the things, and you mentioned it earlier about the students not reading Malcolm X. That's one of the things I've come to understand as a teacher that has been really difficult. I remember growing up and just feeling like a deep connection to just our history and our past. Like anybody could talk about Black history and it just sat with me, like in my spirit. Like I understood it differently. And our students don't have that same, like there's a disconnect there. They just don't have the same. You could hook me on anything related to my people. You had me. And that was the case for almost everybody I knew growing up who looked like me. And our students, there's just a disconnect. Like they're not connected to the struggle. I mean, and I haven't struggled. I mean, I haven't experienced that struggle at all, but they just are so far from what that looks like, right? They just don't understand it.
It's our fault as parents.
Yeah.
I'm sure you teach those in your family Black history. A little boy from Deer Park asked me, Donnie, why are you always talking about Black history? Huh? If you don't know your history, you don't know where you come from.
Exactly.
And what's feeding them these days? The television, Instagram, social media.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm always pushing Black history. I mean, that's what my dad did. And the learning starts at home.
It does.
By the time they get to you, my child is supposed to be prepared to learn and to bring a little something to the table.
Right.
My father, I never knew when I would look up and my father would be at the door. Elementary school. I always wondered as a child, how come the teachers know my father's name? Because he shows up.
Yeah.
As opposed to other kids whose parents had to show up because they were cutting up.
Right, right.
We got a question here or comment from Michael Haney, part of the miseducation.
Yeah.
Mr. Haney has a lot of thoughts there. So now what? What's next?
I would like to, get some rest because I'm tired. No. There's a lot coming next. I'm excited about what the next couple of weeks, just the next couple of weeks and months are going to bring. I'm just really excited to have this platform and like this space. I could have never dreamed this. I actually gave a keynote today, earlier this morning. And I'm from Philadelphia originally. I grew up outside of Philly, and I grew up in an all-white neighborhood. We were the only Black family on my block and for a long time. And the first schools I went to was an all-Black school. But from second grade on, I always was in school. I always had, white teachers, went to all-white schools. And so now I'm like the little Black girl in me at 5, at 6, 7 years old who was sitting in white classrooms could have never dreamed this. Like, this is just beyond what I could imagine, especially to do this and stand as a representative of Deer Park, as a representative of the Randallstown community, of this, this part of the county for our Black children and our children of color over here. Like, I just am excited. I think for that they get to have this forever. Like, they'll get to have this forever, that like, they knew Miss Ross, that they deserved a teacher who was worthy of this kind of recognition. Like, this really, for me, just feels like something really wonderful that they get to have. Like, it's exciting for me, and I'm excited about it, but I'm excited that my kids get to like sharing this joy with me. Like that has been the greatest part of this for me. So I'm excited for the things I get to do next. I have like lots of engagements coming up and things on my calendar. But you know, it'll be teaching. That's what immediately I'll be teaching tomorrow. Like I'll still be teaching. That's what my immediate, you know, sort of goals are, is to continue to be able to do what I'm doing, especially now that we're back in school. Like I missed being in school. So that's brought me like a lot of joy in the last 2 months of school.
I pray that people that hear about your story, especially if their child is at Deer Park, will, number one, get better involved with the PTA.
Yes.
But number two, especially for people whose children now, we need Black people on the school board.
Yes.
I'm so tired of no Black people on the school board. We know what other people do on the school board. We've seen their behavior. We've seen them. They got rid of the last lady out there, didn't they? They messed with her.
Who you talking about?
Vonda, what's the school CEO, superintendent?
Our superintendent now, Dr. Darrell Williams. 2 years ago was Relita White.
Oh, they gave Miss White the blues. Same group. Same kind of people.
Yeah.
Now, as you know, when we in position, we got to be cleaner than Caesar's wife. We know they're coming after us.
We know that. We got to be twice as good.
Political, they're coming after us. But we got to get more involved. And I mentioned Dunbar Brooks. He was very active on the school board. We got to get involved in that. We got to go to Towson. Yeah. Towson is the headquarters. It's the core. It's like in Baltimore City. We got to go to City Hall or over there to school headquarters. Yeah. You got to be in there. You got to bring numbers. Yeah. And my thing is the same way we on Instagram and we liking everything and we doing a TikTok dance. TikTok young parts on over there.
And I think I wish too that our community, that all of our communities, I think understood, and I understand there are other barriers that I don't know about that, might prevent our families, our parents, our community from being more involved in that aspect of it. But I think what I feel like now I've really come to understand and is important is that sometimes what happens, we have these experiences in school, right? We feel like our kids, we don't like the school, or we don't like what's happening. And it's like, we want to come at the school leaders. We want to come at the teachers. And it's like, no, there are bigger issues here, right? Like we show up here every day because we really do love your kids, right? We show up here because we want to do this good work for your child, for your students. And we're doing the best we can, but we need support too. And so I wish it could be, I look forward to, because I know it will happen. I look forward to the time and space when it is like we are in this work together. Let's take our collective power and now take it to the board and take it to Towson and go be at the school board meetings like all the other parents who stand up there and yell about their kids having to wear masks and all that. Like we need that kind of energy to advocate for what we need, right? To like have that same sense of advocacy.
Brianna Ross, Mama's Teacher of the Year. How important is it for Black fathers to be involved in their children's education?
I think it's just as important as, I think it's just as important as having Black mothers involved in education. I think that, I know I have a great Black father. I have the greatest Black father, right? And I know some other really great Black fathers, but I also know lots of children and women who do it on their own, and they rocking out and making it happen too. I think it's wonderful when it does happen, and I think there's a strength in Black fathers, especially when Black fathers show their presence in a building. That's like the one thing I love. I love when we do have, and I saw this when I taught elementary school. We had this a lot when we would have field trips and events. There was something different about the Black father. That was different. There was something different when the dad showed up. Like the dad could show up and stand in the back of the room, and the kids are like, "Oh, let me straighten up." Like there is a certain presence and a certain command that they have that I don't have, that I'll never have, right? And there's also something to be said about their presence, just the way all the kids see them, not just like this one particular student, but their presence to everybody. Like that really does matter. I don't think it means that that if you don't have a father or whatever, I think you'll be just fine. But I do think that there is something to be said when there is a strong Black male presence, not just like Black fathers, but Black men in general having, and because I think anybody could be a father. So any Black men serve as fathers to children who aren't theirs every day. And so when there's just a Black male presence in the community in general, that does really make a difference. And I've seen the way that it makes a difference for our students.
Tell me about the single Black mothers, their challenges as parents.
I mean, the single Black mothers are just gold. Like, they're just gold. I mean, I see them just out here just hustling. I think that they're the challenges that that all single mothers have, but it certainly is different. And I know I spoke to a mother just last week who her daughter's father was murdered, and it's just her, and she's trying to hustle to make it happen, and she's trying to be here at the school, and her daughter's been having some challenges, and so she's trying to be here, do what she has to do for them. And it's not easy, especially at the middle school level. Like, middle school is just this ridiculous time where our kids don't got no common sense no more, and they just be tripping. Like, middle school is just when we're trying to figure ourselves out, and we're right. So our kids start doing stuff that don't even make sense anymore. And we see like a lot of that in middle school, and that definitely is a challenge for all parents. Like, right, parents who are together, parents who are divorced, children who just have one parent or both parents, grandparents, whatever it is. But I know, the single Black mothers, I know they are just gold, like doing it, making it happen. For one child, for multiple children, just like really making it happen and having kids show up and be amazing, right? So I just have a lot of respect for the women who are doing that by themselves with little or no support, with all of the support, whatever that looks like. I have a lot of respect for those parents.
The interesting thing that I've always found about Deer Park Middle is you got $300,000, $200,000 houses on one side on Lyons Mill, and then on Marysville you got apartments.
Yeah. Well, and then even if you go back behind or if you go back on the other side of Liberty Road, on the other side of Marriottsville, then you have those $1 million homes, right? Like back in the Hernwood community. So it's like there's like a really interesting economic dichotomy that happens at Deer Park. And I always think that too, like sometimes when I ride through Owens Mills, I'm like, it's just sometimes it's an interesting way that economically, like sort of we're spread out, and who is showing up through our doors every day.
So the students there, they get to meet all kinds of people upwardly mobile, and people making it from paycheck to paycheck, like
Absolutely.
other places.
Yeah, there's a very rich spread, and it's interesting too, because it's this really rich spread, but we're all students of color, right? Like 81% of us are Black, 90% of us are are non-dominant populations. So that's also what's interesting, is that there's this huge financial spread, but all of us are children of color, families of color for the most part. So yeah, there's an interesting dichotomy there.
Any advice for future teachers?
Just show up authentically. Like, I just cannot stress this enough. I have a new teacher this year, and like that's one thing I've been saying to her and all the new teachers that I work with. Like, the kids will read through. I mean, if they can do anything, they can read you. Like, they know when you fake, they know when you BSing them. And I think that's been for me, like, and it's why I love to teach, because like teaching for me is my safe space. I show up fully as who I am. I don't think I am more myself than when I stand in front of a classroom. And I think it's what makes me really good at what I do. I think it's what my kids connect with. And so I think first showing up authentically as who you are is the most important thing, because they read you if you don't. And you have to show up that way. Like, you have to be who you are in this classroom, just like we want them to be who they are. And then I think the other thing is being able to connect back to like your why and your purpose. Like, why are you here? Like, what made you get into this work? Because we know ain't nobody get into this job for the paycheck, right? So like, why do you do this? And especially this year, when like it has been hard. Like, this year is the hardest year I have experienced as an educator. And so there are days when I have to be like, Bree, why you do this work? Why you do this work for the kids? You do this work for the kids, right? And so I think really connecting back into that on those days where you want to pull your hair out is important.
I'm really encouraged in speaking with you. I feel like there's hope for the future. I have one more question. Where do you want to go next? What's next? Superintendent?
Claim it. God, claim it. Superintendent next. I'm hoping that next after this, I really would like to. I'm praying, say a prayer. I'm trying to get. I want to be done. Get this EDD program done. I really want to get into that dissertation work, but I really want to go into school leadership. I got a certificate in school leadership a few years ago, and that really is like my next step. That is where eventually I really want to land. Them superintendents be taking hits, so I don't know if that's what it is, but it will be something. And I know it will be, my most immediate step, like next year, will be school leadership. Like that is my goal, that is my intention for like the years to come. And certainly moving, I think I think a lot also too just about like the policy side of things, and that's something that I've been starting to become really interested in, is how we're making these decisions. But I struggle with that because I don't think I always want to be with the kids. Like I would struggle in a situation or a position that didn't allow me to be with the kids and really be connected to schools. I really love schools. But I know that most immediately it will definitely be school leadership in the next year or two.
I actually see you being county executive.
Someone else said that to me recently, and I'm like, I have no interest in government, but someone else said this to me recently, so I might have to. Y'all must be speaking something I haven't seen yet. So I'm gonna receive that. I receive it.
We see it. We see it all over you. It's not like we don't have the wherewithal, the intellect, but this is still America. It's still 2021. Slavery in 1865. There are a lot of things that haven't been leveled out just yet. And what I see here in Baltimore City, that a lot of times, you said it earlier, not all kinfolk, kinfolk. We got blacks in all of these powerful positions, yet Sandtown, where I live, where Freddie got killed, is just neglected. For instance, when you close a school, you close a community.
Absolutely.
You close a school, you kill a community. So we had 3 elementary schools. Now we're down to 1.
Wow. And even just the dynamics of merging 3 elementary schools, like that in and of itself is its own beast.
Not the fight. These kids are going across neighborhood lines.
Right.
They didn't have to go across before. We got people on the Baltimore City School Board who look down their nose at Sandtown. They take black names off of schools. What's now Sandtown Winchester Academy used to be George Kelson Elementary. George Kelson was a community icon, a funeral director like my dad, who employed a number of people in the community. But our own black people on the school board took his name off.
Yeah. It's funny because we have Carver and Towson, and I have a couple of students who are at Carver now, and I remember them. They were also excited, and I'm like, yo, y'all better go there. Y'all better never call it Carver. When you go look, even when you Google it online, it just says Carver Center for the Arts and Technology, and I'm like, yo, it is George Washington Carver. Like, say it literally, like online doesn't even say his name. It literally just says Carver Center. Like, we fully erased like the whole reason we name, right? Like the whole person we name this after. So I was telling my kids, when y'all go, y'all better say George Washington Carver every single time, because we cannot erase his name from this. Like, I think about that all the time because they straight, like no one even acknowledges it. Carver is just like a word. It has no significance. And I think about that all the time for the students who go there. Like, is there something when they get there, do they talk about, like, is there any like cultural like understanding of like who this school is named after? Do we talk about it? Do we have to learn about it? Is it posted somewhere? None of that.
So them ladies on the school board that was going after Miss White, maybe that's a question for them. But see, I don't expect them to understand. I expect us to understand and to advocate. Right. And on that note, we cannot forget, if we're talking about Baltimore County and we're talking about political ramifications, we cannot forget Benjamin Banneker. He's a Baltimore County guy.
Yeah.
Genius. There's a wonderful. Have you been out to Oella?
Oella, no.
It's not far from you, just on the other side. It's a black community. They have a museum over there.
Okay.
A black museum.
Oella, I've never been there.
Oella. I know I felt the same way. I'm from North Avenue. You get me out there in the woods, I ain't playing that leg.
I'm gonna have to look it up. I haven't heard of it.
They've got a museum over there. They've done a number of events over the years. It's such a fascinating community. I did want to tell you about the first Black councilman for that area. And I don't think he's doing too well now, but his name is Ken Oliver. And
Okay.
I hope your young people learn about Ken Oliver. You know that Walmart out there?
In Randallstown.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Ken Oliver. It was a TGI Fridays out there. And I think
Oh yeah, it was. Mm-hmm.
that was Ken Oliver. There's a Home Depot,
Mm-hmm.
Ken Oliver. You got a Liberty Road Resource Center with the largest indoor track in the state,
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ken Oliver.
Okay.
We have to celebrate what we have. We have to know,
and especially just within right in our community too, right? Like the richness right where we are, which we have no idea about.
And then I got to tell you one last thing about Kenny Brown. He will be contacting you. He is the publisher of the Northwest Voice newspaper, and what's the 18th, 19th? We have to make sure you're at least on December's cover. You deserve to be on the cover.
Thank you.
And so I got some homework. I got to go look up County Cullen's poem. And what's the name of it again?
Hey Black Child.
Hey Black Child. I
Black
love
Child.
that. Boy, that was a flashback. Any final thoughts? And I lost one of my questions. Didn't want to get too political, but we got to get involved. We got to go to PTA. We got to go to Towson. We got to support our teachers. And I tell you, one thing I did get on my nerves about y'all in the county. Y'all got a fundraiser every 5 minutes. I saw so many fundraisers stuff. Every time I turn around, it's a fundraiser.
Oh, I don't know who that is. We won't be doing that well, at least not at their park. We won't be doing that at their park. That's them. That ain't us.
Baltimore County Keep a School fundraiser. Oh my goodness. But any final thoughts, Brianna?
No, I just, yeah, thank you for having me. I've had lots of conversations over the last, since winning Baltimore County Teacher of the Year, but I just appreciate talking to a Black man who knows my community. This has been like the most interesting conversation I've had, because being able to share knowledge and learn from you, like I appreciate this space to learn from you. I wrote down Ken Oliver's name so I won't forget it, so I can go do my research, and Oella, so I'm not going to forget to go do those things. But I appreciate, and I see your book and Dr. Wilson's book, so I'm going to make sure that I do both of those things.
Please, let me get us both out of jail right now. Who is Dr. Wilbert Wilson?
Dr. Wilbert Wilson has been hooking me up and just has been, I've met him recently, but he has been just, I don't even have enough words for him. I talked to my parents, and I think he comes up in my conversation like once every 4 days, 3 or 4 days with my parents. He has just been phenomenal, and having known me a very, very short time, has just been an advocate. Like I can't describe him as anything but just an advocate and a supporter, and truly here for us and here for our advancement, our growth, our development as a people, me as a woman and as an educator, a Black woman in particular. So I have much respect for him. Thank you, Dr. Wilson, because I know you're listening, and I appreciate you.
So let me share this with you. You know he's connected around the state of Maryland.
I know he's very connected.
He's connected beyond the state of Maryland. So we give away these Black Wall Street awards. I tell him that I'm going down to New Orleans. Next thing I know, he started going through his phone book, call this person, call that person. He know the whole town.
Yes. Dr. Wilson is the man.
He's national at minimum.
Yeah. At minimum, yes.
And he's very big on us knowing our value.
Mm-hmm.
It troubles him when he sees our young men standing on the corner, panhandling. It's in his nature to go and find out what the challenges, how he can help them. He supported my first book like no other, Unapologetically Black. It's nice to have an elder,
yes,
that who has the history, and he can articulate that history. I was talking with a lady today in San Antonio earlier on the show, and she was talking about how we missed out by not recording the oral tradition from my grandmothers and
Yes,
grandfathers about
absolutely.
our history, whether
Hmm.
it was your grandmother was a Blackfoot Indian, or
Right.
your people come from Orangeburg, South Carolina, or whatever it is
Hmm.
that we need to know. Because
We missed that.
earlier you talked about the disconnect, and part of that disconnect is we ain't talking to grandma and recording what she told
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, the storytelling piece. And it's funny. It's funny that you said that about Dr. Wilson because um, I mentioned earlier my grandfather graduated from Morgan in 56 and was just like a beacon for our family. But education was so important to him. And Dr. Wilson reminds me of him just in his spirit, in his knowledge, in his wisdom, and in his connectedness. So I know my grandfather put Dr. Wilson in my path for a reason. But I think about that because he passed when I was young. I was in elementary school. And I think about that all the time. Like I miss that a bit. I miss that piece of being able to hear the storytelling, like the narrative piece of being able to share those stories. I think all the time, like there's pieces of my own history that I don't know, that when I have children, like I won't be able to share that with them. So my family has been trying to do a little bit of a digging into what we can find and what we do know and what we can find out about ourselves. So I agree with you. That's like a really important piece. It's funny last year, because I'm the social studies department chair at Deer Park. And so last year, because we were all home for Black History Month, and the theme was around the Black family last year for Black History Month. And so I didn't want to do like the typical, research someone. I was like, let's tap into what we know. And so one of the projects my students had to do was to research. There were three interview projects because I really wanted them to be able to talk to people who they knew. And so one was like interview, a member of your family who lived through the civil rights movement. But then another was just like interview a grandparent or like an elder in your family and have them share those stories with you. And that was the project, like record it. And that was it. Like it just was for the sake of doing it, just being able to sit down and connect and hear that history while you can. I felt like was really important because I think I missed that. So I agree that's a really important piece for all of us.
Well, the good books say that all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. He fills a void in my life. I wish my dad were here so I could bounce questions off of him. But
Yeah.
what I also love about Wilbert Wilson, he's a man's man. You take him off, you're going to see just how much a man's man he is. He don't back down on nothing. Nobody that will catch the wrath. And Lord, I ain't never seen him pray, but I imagine he can start calling on the ancestors.
We all have to sometimes.
He's a bold soldier who reminds us that I believe it was Franz Fanon, but one of the great thinkers said that every generation has a purpose, has a mission, and we must either embrace it or betray it. Yeah. Every generation has a mission, and this generation, they're dealing with life coming at them, warp speed, Instagram, megahertz, terms we didn't grow up with. I got a rotary phone just right over there, a rotary. But this is a whole new day and time. But some things don't change. And that's like a good education, respect for your parents and your elders, and making them proud down the road.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for your time this evening, Brianna Ross.
Thank
On
you.
behalf of the people, we are so proud of you. Can't wait to see how many teachers manifest as you pour out there. I pray that the return is tenfold, that those stories, those young people will come up to you that you may have forgotten. Hey, Miss Brianna! And say thank you for turning my light bulb on and make me
Thank you so much, Mr. Glover, for having me. Please connect me with your daughter if she needs anything. Please, I will be a stronghold for her. So if she needs anything, please let me know. And I just appreciate this space. God bless you. We'll say prayers for each other.
We'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock with the Black USA Morning Show. Have a beautiful day, everyone.